Hey everybody, Retro Gaming Guy here. Today in this video, we're going to jump in and test out this Arcade1up cabinet that I just set up today. This is the Terminator 2 Judgment Day light gun Arcade1up cabinet with Sinden light guns. So we're going to dive into this. We're going to see what this has to offer and see if it's something I would recommend or tell you guys to steer clear of. Let's dive into it. All right, guys, here we have our T2 Judgment Day Arcade1up cabinet. Now, the skull up there at the top, that is something that I added myself. That does not come with this at all. But you can see the design here. It looks very true to the original cabinet. This is a larger scale. I love the outside graphics here too of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Really nicely put together. The light up LED marquee up here looks really great with the lights, especially when I kill the lights, which I'll show you guys momentarily. Just want to make sure you can see everything right now. The guns here and how they actually rest in place, very similar to that of rail shooter games. Now, I wasn't crazy about this when I saw it, but in all honesty, it really doesn't bother me now that I have it in person. The only thing I'm critical of is how close the end of the gun goes to the actual bezel there, because you can definitely see how when I take it out of the seat here, it does actually kind of bounce off there a little bit, especially when you go to put it back in. You obviously just naturally are going to hit it there. Of course, the screen's a little bit higher, but still, I think that could be an issue. Also, you have to make sure that you come in here and you actually move the cable, seat it down that little slot there. Otherwise, your gun is not going to sit in there properly and be safe and secure. So just, you know, a little bit of a nuisance. I'm not crazy about, obviously, the excessive cord length here, especially since I honestly wouldn't be playing it, you know, all the way back here. You can see there's a lot of length on this. We could probably do away with, honestly, half of that and not interfere with the gameplay at all. But again, you can see I'm putting this in place. Definitely, you know, you need two hands here. Obviously, I'm filming with one hand, but in order to get that in there comfortably, you know, it can be a bit of a challenge. Now, the top of this is not a glossy surface at all. It's very matte. So I think this could, over time, end up getting dinged up a little bit here, especially around the T-molding edges, which you can see right here. It's not true T-molding. In fact, this piece has kind of pulled away. I can tuck that back in there, but it is a tight fit. So you can see it's already starting to have some issues there. These are very minor, of course, but this is just sitting it down. If I took my knife out, I could probably just slide that in there, you know, all the way. But definitely something that you do come across with Arcade1up cabinets. All in all, though, I have very minimal, like, you know, dings and stuff like that, which I think you're going to end up with, you know, just during a regular course of setting this up. In all honesty, I think anybody that's set up anything from Arcade1up has definitely run into that issue before, where you end up just having the slightest little crease or, you know, ding or nick or something like that. Here's another one right here. That one actually I saw out of the box. It had that on there. So I think that's just something that probably got dinged up when they packaged this and put it all together. But it's very typical for Arcade1up cabinets. They're not the highest quality in terms of the materials here, but at the end of the day, it does look very sharp. So we're going to dive into this. We're going to play a little bit, and I'll talk about what the gameplay experience is like on here. But side by side with my NFL Blitz Arcade1up over there, you can see that this is much taller. Got a good, I would say, about 10 inches taller on this. The screen size is actually exactly the same, 17 inches. So very clear picture here. Now I have this at just a menu screen right now, just so this wasn't running around kind of throwing my autofocus off. But we're going to jump into a gameplay experience here and see what this is all about. All right, guys, so we just jumped into T2 Judgment Day for the Arcade1up cabinet right here. And all in all, it was a very good experience. Now let's talk about the design of this cabinet. I like the scale of this. Usually I'm critical of the scale of Arcade1up cabinets, but since I started getting them for this room right here, I actually like the smaller scale. And this is larger than what we have going on over here with the NFL Blitz cabinet. And this is actually larger than what we typically get from Arcade1up. So you're seeing two of the larger scale options from Arcade1up. I like that this is a little bit taller. I like that the screen for me is perfect height. If you're a little bit taller than me, I'm 5'8", 5'9". If you're taller than me, you might be aiming down ever so slightly. But for me, it's pretty much straight ahead here. And I'm not aiming up here. I'm shooting pretty much from right here because this is a rail shooter. So it's not one of those where you're really zeroing in on your targets and being super precise. You're pretty much just pulling that trigger and moving it around the screen to hit your various targets because there's a lot of targets coming out at once here. So really like how on point everything is with the guns as well. Calibration came on point. You can recalibrate this if you want to. For me, it made no difference because it was on point to begin with, but love that we have that option here. Very accurate. Great response time on here. It's not one of those situations where you move and there's a delay before it tracks on screen. It is very good. Sinden actually makes these. They aren't as, they aren't the true Sinden experience in that they are definitely dumbed down quite a bit, which I'll talk about momentarily. But let's talk about first the way that they're seated here. Now, this was something that I hated about this when I saw this, initially released, and I saw review videos. I saw people playing this. I just hated the way that they would sit here. I will say this, though, it's much better than I expected it to be. I like the fact that everything lines up underneath the actual screen, so these don't obstruct your view of the screen if you're just leaving this on in the background like I am today. So that's something that in the pictures I didn't really notice. I thought that these would be kind of blocking the bottom of the screen. That's not the case. You can see right here how this works. The downside to the design is, yes, we have a little cutaway right here where your cable connection is going to go, but you have to really line that up with two hands here. Showed you that a little bit before. The other downside is you have less than a 1/4 inch of space between the end of your gun to the bottom of the bezel here. So you're undoubtedly going to hit this almost every single time. Even when I think about how I want to not hit the end of my gun to the bezel here, not that I'm in fear of this damaging here, I'm in fear of this getting scratched. If this gets scratched enough, it will interfere with the camera on the end, and you will have an awkward experience in the end. So you can see here, when I'm super careful, there we go, it still rocks forward and hits it. But when I'm super careful, I can get it in there. But if I'm just kind of, throwing it in here casually, it does bounce off of there before it actually seats into the hole. So something to take into consideration, especially if you have kids. I have kids. My daughter was playing this one as soon as I had this set up. In fact, I didn't even have the base of this installed before she was on here playing it. So it's something you want to look out for. Obviously, you don't want somebody banging the end of your gun into the bezel here for two reasons. You don't want the bezel to get damaged eventually. I don't think that's going to be a common issue though. But you definitely don't want to have any wear and tear on the tip of this, or it's going to eventually interfere with your gameplay experience. Now let's talk about the guns themselves. Like I said, they're made by Sinden. They are dumbed down quite a bit from what we've seen from Sinden for regular usage. So triggers, let's look at the triggers. All in all, very cheap sort of feel to this, in all honesty. It feels really inexpensive, very lightweight, feels like a toy. But it works well, I will say that. Now take a look at the trigger though. A lot of action on here. We have all this movement in here, and you can see that the trigger is not even engaging yet. And I'll show you, it works right now without even being in game. So what I find I have to do is I have to pull the trigger. I'll actually do it from this side. Pull the trigger and then pull it again to actually engage it so it actually functions. So if I really tug it, it engages. Now, if I was playing games where it's one of those games where you want to zero in on a target, pull, shoot one time, pull, shoot one time, it's going to be really awkward. It's not going to be a good experience. Luckily, with a rail shooter game like this, you're pretty much just pulling that trigger back like this, and you're moving around, hitting all your targets. So for this type of game, it works fine, but definitely not the highest quality. I don't like how much movement we have there. Of course, in a perfect world, I'd want it to just be one straight pull back, and it works perfectly. The recoil feels good. It vibrates throughout the gun. And we have different settings here. We have the recoil sound, and we also have this little button here we can just slide forward, and now we don't have that recoil action anymore. So it does get pretty loud. I think that kind of brings that whole experience together though, in all honesty. It's more of a loud noise than on the original cabinet. It was more of like a vibrating, deeper sort of sound to it. So very different than the original action on the actual light gun, but still, in the end of the day, it's pretty nice. And obviously, we're able to pick this up, move it around with the cable, whereas the original cabinet, you would have been more fixed, obviously, to the arcade deck. So minor differences, but I think they're good differences here. But all in all, really like the design of this. At the end of the day, though, we have to remember this is an Arcade1up, and I've reviewed Arcade1up cabinets before. I've set up many of these in the past. They're not the highest quality. From top to bottom, they're pretty budget friendly. Now, that means that they're put together inexpensively. That doesn't mean they don't cost an absolute fortune, because this retails for about $700. I got this for much less. I feel very comfortable buying it for much less than retail. If I was paying retail for it, in all honesty, you're going to overpay when you consider the quality here and the fact that we have one game on here. I love T2 Judgment Day, but I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. It does get boring after a little while. It's not going to be something that I think everybody wants to play through. I think this is going to be like a 5-minute game, and then you're going to be like, all right, that was cool. Put the gun down, and probably you're going to look at it because it's visually very cool to look at, and you can decorate it with some cool, accessories to make it a cool backdrop, as I have here. But is it something that I think people are really going to spend a lot of time diving into and playing all the way through? Probably not, unless you're a massive fan. For me, though, I plan to customize this and mod it out. So I'm going to end up with access to hundreds of light gun games in here. I'm going to actually swap these out as well. So I'm going to change the overall experience here, but I'm going to keep the layout and design because I really like the Terminator vibe here. And I'm certainly going to still have the ability to play this game. But when considering whether this is right for you, consider the pros and cons here. If you're not familiar with Arcade1up cabinets, just know that they're not the highest quality out there. So you're going to get some issues. And I showed you guys up close that we have a little issue here with the T-molding. Another one down here on the riser where it's just kind of bubbled, and that's how it came. This one over here, I'll take credit for that one. I probably did that when I put the two pieces together. When I dropped the arcade deck down, I probably pinched it a little bit there. Didn't notice it initially. It is what it is, though. You're going to have minor issues like that. Maybe not these exact ones, but somewhere on your surface, you're going to get a ding or a crease or a nick or something like that. It's just bound to happen. Again, I've set up tons of these in the past. I've always had one little thing here or there. It is what it is. It's not something that I think anybody else is going to notice, but you as the person that's putting every aspect of this together, you're going to see these little things during that process. So just prepare yourself. No matter what you do, if you lay a thick blanket down or something like that for all your pieces, I promise you, you're probably still going to end up with one little ding, one little nick somewhere that drives you crazy. Just prepare for that. But at the end of the day, it works as it's supposed to. It is decent enough quality. Just if you can try to get it for less, certainly do that, because I think that they are overpriced, when paying retail for these. But let me know what you guys thought of this setup right here. I'm going to mod it. I'm going to have videos on how I mod it, what modifications I add to this, what I end up with in the end, and we'll track the experience along the way. So definitely be sure to hit subscribe so you stay in the loop for those different videos that I'll be doing with this cabinet right here. That's going to do it for today, though. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content today, please give me a thumbs up right here on this video. And of course, hit subscribe to stay in the loop for that future video or future videos that I do with this and many other things here on the channel. That's going to do it for today, though. Thank you guys so much for the support. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.